time. You're so welcome. I'm going to be inviting comments and questions. Please do feel free to interact at any time that you'd like to, and I'll do my very best to respond to you. My name is Mike Davidson, and I work with Core Issues Trust, and probably the single greatest privilege that I have is to be able to work with men and women who want out of unwanted sexual feelings and attractions and behaviors. And I was thinking about some of the commonalities that I experience when I speak to them, and I wondered if it wouldn't be helpful for anybody who is interested in the same work, or for people who are out there looking for help and don't quite know what to expect. So I'm hoping that by the end of this session, you'll have a good general overview of the kinds of things we do in the counselling work that is undertaken by Core Issues Trust. The thing is, whatever you say, people can take this to be a recipe. Hello, Matthew. I see you've joined us. You're very welcome. And I'm not really here to give recipes because everybody's different. Everybody comes from different backgrounds. Many come from a faith background. Some come with no faith, and others come with other faiths. So everybody's different, and then everybody's goals are different also. But I was thinking today about the need as counselors to be careful in terms of how we work with people. And so I'm hoping that this is an opportunity to kind of showcase some of the things that we are saying in an open and transparent way. So let's get on with it. I have really appreciated a statement that Paul Popper wrote in 2020. And I'm not sure that it's particularly unique, but here's the point. He is kind of categorizing people who struggle in this area, typically. Just listen to this. I am profoundly hurt, disappointed, let down by my father. I know I'm not like him. I don't want to be like him. I'm different. I'm not acceptable to him, to all men. It's all too much to handle, too overwhelming to feel so different and so alone. I don't need him. I do not need anybody like him. I don't need men. I don't need masculinity. And hopefully you can read the rest, but here's the point. What we often hear in people who come for help is this protest. I don't fit. I don't belong. Secondly, we hear despair. People feel overwhelmed and on the outside, not able to participate in some of the central issues of life because they feel so different and they feel excluded, and sometimes they feel rejected. So there's a great deal of despair. And then what happens inevitably is there is a great deal of detachment. So it's this attitude, I don't care, I don't need anybody, I'm all right as I am. And so they go on in life, not realizing that by taking that position in their life and accepting those feelings of despair and rejection and continually raising the protest, that the problem simply gets worse. But here's the thing. It's one thing to have a view that homosexuality is not the best way of functioning in life and in society. And to share that, as I think we often do, certainly in the church and certainly professionals. Some professionals have that view. I know broadly many hold another point of view. Hello, Thomas. How good to see you all the way from Norway. That's really encouraging. Thank you for being here. So it's no good saying to people, this is not something that you should do, it's not healthy, and then we fail to provide a way out and to provide the support. So many people coming in. Thank you so much for doing that and being there. I'm ready for your questions, but let me just carry on. I just want to show you a clip here. Now, this has been knocking around for a long time, and the quality is not great, folks. It's about a woman who was afraid of being buried in a box. It's called Stop It. And I think it illustrates something really important. Just have a quick watch.
Dr. Switzer?
Yes, come in. I'm just washing my hands.
I'm Catherine Bigman. Janet Carlisle referred me.
Oh, yes. Fear of being buried alive in a box.
Yes, that's me. Should I lay down?
Oh, no, we don't do that anymore. Just have a seat. And let me tell you a bit about our billing. I charge $5 for the first 5 minutes. And then absolutely nothing after that. How does that sound?
That sounds great. Too good to be true, as a matter of fact.
Well, I can almost guarantee you that our session won't last the full 5 minutes. Now, we don't do any insurance billing, so you would either have to pay in cash or by check.
Wow. Okay.
And I don't make change.
All right.
And go.
Go.
Well,
What?
tell me about the problem that you wish to address.
Oh, okay. Well, I have this fear of being buried alive in a box. I start thinking about being buried alive, and I begin to panic.
Has anyone ever tried to bury you alive in a box?
No, but truly thinking about it does make my life horrible. I mean, I can't go through tunnels or be in an elevator or in a house, anything boxy.
So what you're saying is you're claustrophobic.
Yes, that's it.
All right, well, let's go, Catherine. I'm going to say 2 words to you right now. I want you to listen to them very, very carefully. Then I want you to take them out of the office with you and incorporate them into your life.
Well, shall I write them down?
Well, if it makes you comfortable, it's just 2 words. We find most people can remember them.
Okay.
You ready?
Yes.
Okay, here they are. Stop it!
I'm sorry?
Stop it!
Stop it?
Yes, S-T-O-P, new word, I-T.
So, what are you saying?
You know, it's funny. I say 2 simple words, and I cannot tell you the amount of people who say exactly the same thing you're saying. I mean, this is not Yiddish, Catherine. This is English. Stop it.
So, I should just stop it.
There you go. I mean, you don't want to go through life being scared of being buried alive in a box, do you? I mean, that sounds frightening.
It is.
Then stop it.
I can't. I mean, it's been with me since childhood.
No, we don't go there. Just stop it.
So I should just stop being afraid of being buried alive in a box.
You got it. Good go. Well, it's only been 3 minutes, so that will be $3.
Actually, I only have a 5, so
Well, I don't make change.
then I guess I'll take the full 5 minutes.
Fine. All right. Well, what other problems would you like to address?
I'm bulimic. I stick my fingers down my throat.
Stop it! What are you, nut of some kind? Don't do that.
But I'm compelled to. My mom used to call me fatty.
No, we don't go there.
But I've been having this dream.
No, we don't go there either.
But my horoscope did say...
We definitely don't go there. Just stop it. What else?
Well, I have self-destructive relationships with men.
Stop it! You want to be with a man, don't you?
Yes.
Well, then stop it. Don't be such a big baby.
I wash my hands a lot.
That's all right.
It is?
I wash my hands all the time. And there's a lot of germs out there. Yeah, don't worry about that one.
I'm afraid to drive.
Well, stop it! How are you going to get around? Get in the car and drive, you kook. Stop it!
You stop it! You stop it!
What's the problem, Catherine?
I don't like this. I don't like this therapy at all. You're just telling me to stop it.
And you don't like that?
No, I don't.
So you think we're moving too fast? Is that it?
Yes. Yes, I do.
All right, then let me give you 10 words that I think will clear everything up for you. You want to get a pad and a pencil for this one?
All right.
Are you ready? All right, here are the 10 words. Stop it, or I'll bury you alive in a box!
What can I say, folks? You've got to have a plan if you're going to do something in your life with these issues. And it's really important when you start working with somebody that together you've got a plan. And that's what I want to be talking about in this session. What does a good plan look like? Even though everybody's plan may be very different. When you think about it, actually, some of these issues that we face, I think, are definitely related to how things went for us as children, as we were growing up. So I have something here that works for me, and I'm hoping it'll be useful to you. Early on, as we grow up, we're very codependent on our mothers, and our fathers play a role, and we're going to talk about that role hopefully at some point. But there comes a day when we want to move away from our mothers, and so we become more and more counter-dependent. And we've all seen it, the toddler who doesn't want help, who walks away from his mother and wants to move towards independence. And actually, that's the next step. He wants to do things his own way. This is the little boy who wants to be Superman and wants to jump off the garage rooftop. But the process in all of this, or the goal in all of this, is about getting towards interdependence. That's the goal, actually, for all of us. We need to be able to work with other people and to interact with other people. We have to have social connection if we want to succeed. So it's probably worth just spending a little bit of time looking at when this occurs exactly. And you can see the bonding that leads to codependency is in the first 6 to 9 months. And the separation that leads to counterdependency is between 18 and 36 months. The stage that leads to independence, which is about developing autonomy, should be completed about 6. And the idea of being able to balance ourselves and to be independent and yet part of a group, the separateness and the oneness being held in balance, or the interdependence is usually achieved, or hopefully achieved, between ages 6 and 12. Now, I think this is probably culturally dependent. What I've presented here is fairly generic. I think a lot of people would support it, some wouldn't. I see I don't have a reference on that, but I think it comes from Levin. Are we getting sound now, folks? I'm sorry, we missed that. No sound, I'm being told. Is that happening? Can anybody let me know? I'd be really grateful. Let me make sure I've got enough sound on my desktop. Does that help at all? Okay, I'm going to carry on until I know what to do, because I can see here that the sound is working here. So we'll just have to see what happens, folks. Sound is clear. Okay, we're making progress. I'm glad to hear that. So we were talking about the developmental stages here. And I was simply saying that, just to recap very quickly, bonding, separation, autonomy, and balancing is a specific process that goes on in life. This may all be, something that is culturally dependent and changes or looks different in different cultures. If you look at African children who are up before their parents, herding the cattle, coming back home, making the breakfast, carrying water, they're surely far more well-developed than we are in the West. Our children, perhaps are developed in other ways, but those children seem to be particularly successful in the way they learn to work and slowly become integrated. So it happens different in different cultures. But folks, this is the point I'm trying to make. I think we can see from this that there are any number of places in our developments as journey where things can go wrong, where children don't want to develop any kind of separation from mother, where they develop an anxiety when it comes to separation. It was also, sorry, I got sidetracked there, reading Kylie's comment there. Thank you, Kylie. It's good to see you. Thank you for coming in and being with us today. Okay, so folks, you get the point. Things can go wrong. If a child doesn't want to separate from its mother, or if a child refuses to develop any kind of autonomy, or experiences continual difficulty in socializing with other children, this is going to be a problem for them. So it's up to us, really. When people come and are working through these issues, to listen very carefully. So it's important, if you're somebody who's coming for help, it's really important that you begin to reflect on what happened to you as a child. Now, it doesn't have to become something obsessive, but I think it's a very healthy thing to be able to talk through the things you remember in terms of how you interacted with your peers, how you interacted with your parents, with your siblings, for those that you went to school with, how was it when you interacted with them? All of those are going to be very helpful in revealing exactly what happens when we go through our development. So in the next few weeks, hopefully over 10 weeks, I am hoping to be able to delve into some of these issues, developmental issues, that may give particular perspective for people who are interested in doing this work. They will begin to hopefully see that actually they have taken a unique trajectory. It just didn't happen the way it happened for other children. I often hear this when men tell me how they longed to participate in say, soccer with other boys, and they just couldn't. They didn't have the skills. They didn't have the confidence. Sometimes they felt rejection because when they tried, they made mistakes. Sometimes they didn't have somebody who they could go to, who could take them through a step-by-step process. And because of that, they miss out and lose the opportunity to develop skills that will help them to become more and more social. Now, I guess the assumption in all of this is if we fail to reach this goal of interdependence, if we don't somehow go through this process of separation and the desire to be independent, it damages us. And then very often what seems to happen, because we feel on the outside, there is a deep longing. And there's a desire to attach to those who are demonstrating really good behavior in this area. Those who, in our way of thinking, are doing things in a particularly ideal way. And we long to be able to do that, and we just don't know how to do it. So that's why I think it's in session 3. I can't remember. We'll check a bit later. No, it's session 2. We're going to be talking about attachment hunger and the way we attach, because everybody's attachment template, if we put it that way, is different. Well, folks, you're just letting me lecture here, and you're not asking me any questions or challenging what I'm saying. You know, you could do that as well, and I'd invite you to do that. And hopefully next week, same time, Wednesday next week, the 29th, I think it is, we're going to continue, and it would be great if you could join us there. Okay, so where do we go from here? Give me a second, folks. Yes. So once we've got an understanding of our background, and it's great to do that with somebody who's present for you. They won't have all the answers necessarily, but they can listen to you and listen to your perspective on your journey. And then I think it's really important for anybody who is in a counseling role, whether it's a pastoral counselor or somebody who's doing work from a kind of more neutral point of view, that they begin to then design a plan that is kind of bespoke and yet follows general principles in terms of how we could work. So I'm going to share something with you that possibly for some people is controversial because it was done by Richard Cohen. And I was thinking about this, you know, if I talk about any particular therapist, let me just come back and say this before we go to a full view of the slide. It doesn't matter who I talk about. If I talk about Levin, if I talk about Cohen, if I talk about Nicolosi, everybody is going to have a point of view about their work and where they came from. But I just want to say something here that I think we can, you know, pick the meat and leave the bones if there are any bones, and that it's perfectly acceptable to look for what really works. And this, I have to say, has really worked for me. I was privileged to do some courses with Richard Cohen. He came and taught, and I have to say his work was really thorough. So just have a look at this. If you look at the counseling process for those with unwanted same-sex attractions, That is, people who have got to the point where they say, look, I want to do something about this, then this is a possible plan. So just to be clear, folks, and thank you, Ali, for what you're saying about relating to attachment in the early years. It really is important, isn't it? The work of Bowlby on attachment theory, folks, those of you who are interested in delving this into a bit more deeply, that's where you need to go. Attachment is really important. So back to our plan here. Once a person has decided, okay, I want to do something about it, then I think this is a pretty good, overall plan. Now, my friend Ferguson is making a suggestion here. He says boiling up the bones. I think what he's saying is when you pick the meat and leave the bones, maybe it's a good idea to mash up the bones and suck the meat out of them. I don't know. I don't know what the metaphor is here, folks. But anyway, so have a look. Stage 1, transitioning. That is about leaving unwanted behaviors. I really for a minute. I'm hoping you're with me still. Can somebody give me a signature, an indication if you're still with us? So for people who have decided that they want to leave unwanted same-sex attractions, when they begin transitioning, they have to begin to deal with behaviors. The sound is lost, I'm being told. How's it doing now? The sound went off. No, I didn't hide my camera, Matthew. What happened was I was booted off the system and I just tried to come back. So can you hear me now? Somebody give me an indication. Oh, you can hear me. So for people who want to leave unwanted same-sex attractions, just have a look at stage 1 here. It's about cutting off sexual behavior, number 1. You know, we can't pour the alcohol down the drain. And those of us who have issues with behaviors that are unwanted, we really do need to cut off the behavior. Now, that's why people of faith really sometimes have more motivation and more support from their faith communities. Their Christian communities very often help them, not always, but sometimes they do. What I have noticed is that as people are able to deal with the behaviors, it seems as though the feelings begin to dissipate. Now, it's never linear. It's always on a continuum. So a person may be journeying and doing pretty well, and then something triggers them, and they might even have a fall. Maybe they go into pornography, or they might actually go and do some things that they really react to. They feel that they are, well, they're just inconsistent with their values, and it's not according to the plan that they want. The problem is they can lose their confidence, and they can begin to say, oh, well, this doesn't work. But this is what I want to say. Folks, if it happens to you, don't drop down to the foot of the mountain, okay? If there's an issue and a fall comes, get up and 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 keep affirming the goal that you have. Keep your eye on the top of the mountain. Look for people who will support you in that, who will cheer you on and encourage you. If you do that, I believe eventually you will get to the top of the mountain. But I think by what I've said, you'd agree with me that it's really important to develop a good support network. And what you're actually doing in your support network is building up your self-confidence, your sense of self-worth. And if you are a person of faith, you are building up your relationship with God. So that might take some time to achieve all of this. It's very important. Somebody's asking, is NLP and hypnosis of help here? Well, some people have reported that it is. I would be a bit nervous of hypnosis myself, but it's interesting to read the anecdotal evidence on this. Some people will get help from all sorts of things. Okay, so once that's done, and that may take several months, it may take a long time to get to the point where people actually end their behaviors. That might mean that they have to cut all sorts of ties. And if they cut ties with friends that have been supporting them in a different social context, the thing is, there's going to be a vacuum. And so it's really important that if you're in a position to support these people, that you give them a helping hand and help them to find communities, whether they are online communities or face-to-face groups or a counseling situation. It's really important to connect them. Once the behaviors have begun to get more into control, it doesn't have to be perfect, but as long as ground has been made in terms of behavior, then I think it's about building on self-esteem again, and obviously your relationship with God. But this is the point at which you need to be developing assertiveness, and a good counselor or therapist can help you with this. In fact, if you don't have access to a therapist, I would say go and find somebody who delivers training around assertiveness, good old assertiveness training. Now, why? Well, I think it's Nicolosi who spoke a lot about the assertive state. If we are in the assertive state, in other words, if we are not passive, if we're not sitting head down, shoulders down, disappointed, anxious, and depressed, we are likely not to get into homosexual behaviors. So assertiveness training needs to be something that we're involved in. I was reflecting on this recently and just thinking about my own journey, and I tried to explain this recently, and I'm not sure I did a very good job of it, because what happened in my case was I kept finding myself in professional contexts that were too big for me. In fact, I still find that often today, that there seems to be things that I have to do if I'm going to achieve my goals and do what I'm supposed to do that are far too big for me, and they stretch me. It might be, trusting for finances. It might be sorting out the technology. It might be interacting with the media. All things that maybe I would shy away from. But folks, what I've realized is that as I've been able to rise to the challenge, often not gracefully, it doesn't necessarily happen easily, but the process of doing it, of jumping off the pier and swimming in the water and taking risks, I think has been something that has really helped me. So I think it's important to make sure that you look at how you interact with risk. And if you are risk averse, maybe that's an area that you need to get some help with, because risk aversion can be something that stops you, especially as a man, from getting ahead and of accepting challenge. Now, don't misunderstand me. I'm not saying that we should ever throw caution to the wind. Caution is a good quality to have, but it's when it begins to interfere, when it drives you into passivity, when it refuses to allow you to assert yourself, where it continually sabotages your self-confidence. That's when I think it's time to be talking about it with somebody who can help you. Let's just go on from there. After the assertiveness, or once the assertiveness is something that becomes more of a pattern, then we need to begin the inner healing work. And you can see stages 3 and 4 deal with the homo-emotional wounds and the hetero-emotional wounds. Now, I just remind you that this is Cohen's conceptualization of a way of working here. So there'll be other plans and other ways of going about how you map out the trajectory of your pathway, or how you work with somebody who has covenanted to stand with you and talk through the issues, somebody who's a counselor and even a therapist. Here's the thing, folks. I think it's really important to make sure that we are in control. It shouldn't be that we passively go and sit in front of somebody who is considered to be expert, and we somehow lose our autonomy and our sense of focus. I would say this, that if you're working with a therapist or a counselor and you are not free to follow your goal, that may well be a problem. And so it's probably a good time to deal with the fact that, when we are doing our work as people who believe that it's possible to move away from homosexual practices, what do we do if our clients begin to want to go in a different direction? It's really important that the gift of autonomy that every human being should have is given to them. And people have rights and freedoms, and I don't believe that we should be about persuading anybody. I think we should be in a position to show them the way that we have found, or the way we believe would be helpful to them, but we really can't guarantee that or we cannot impose an outcome on what we do. I'm just having a quick look at the comments here. There's a glitch. Thomas, what do you mean there's a glitch? It's not getting to Norway. I wonder what's happening there. Just let me know. And there's some other comments here. Just let me have a quick read, folks, if you don't mind. So somebody's asking about the concept of attachment to the father. Now, I can't really get into it now. There's going to be a whole session looking at attachment, not only to the father, but to near peers, to people that we engage with at work. Attachment is a very big issue, and I think it's just good to note it and park it, and to indicate that we'll be going back there. Okay. So dealing with the homosexual or the homo-emotional needs. According to Cohen, we continue with all the tasks above, but what we have to do is begin to discover the root causes of homo-emotional and social wounds. And what that actually means is at some point, we probably are going to begin grieving. And I've seen that. Men who have somehow regretted the type of relationship that they've had with their fathers or their mothers. And they go into deep grieving because it's a fact they can't really change it. We can't put the clocks back. And it's, it's with real regret that we reflect back and see what could have been done better. That's why for me, psychodrama is really useful, because in a group context, you can set the scene, you can create the context where you can go back and visit some of those moments through drama. If you want to Google psychodrama and learn a bit about it, I'd encourage you to do it. It's a really useful technique because it uses the group to be able to recreate dynamics. And as long as it's done safely so that people aren't re-traumatized, because we never want to do that, it can help a person to get a perspective. And in the safety of a group context, they can begin to look at alternatives. So that's what happened historically in the past. And this is the way I reacted to it. But I could have done this and that. And the group often is a source of helpful insights about what actually happened. And then a person can deal with those issues. And what we find in psychodrama, if we reenact things, if we change the circumstances, and if we work through what happened and then apply the new things we've learned in terms of how we react to that, even doing that can be helpful and can show an improvement, because it's a kind of simulation. It didn't happen historically in the past, but I can deal with it now and I can reform the way I think about it. That's why psychodrama, I think, is really useful. So it's likely at this time that we will begin the process of grieving. Michael asks a very important question here. He says, how important is working with our inner child, and what can we do with it? Just let me take a minute to explain this for those of you who don't know. Transactional analysis talks about us having an inner child, an inner parent, and an adult. Have you ever had an argument with yourself and one part is saying this and the other part is saying the other, and in the middle of all of this, it's like there is something nagging and something that is very cloying, very determined to get your attention. It's almost as though there is an inner child that is not listening to reason, is not looking at fact, but just wants to get their needs met. And a lot of work has been done around the inner child. And inner child work, again, it will be controversial, and many will say it shouldn't be done or can't be done. There's literally hundreds of models of doing work, and some people will favor some and others will not. For me, and I'm sure for others, meeting my inner child and learning to minister to my inner child. So, that part of me that demands something and has to be modified by my adult, who says that's very selfish. It's as though I have to call my parent part to come and moderate between the two and to find the balance. Somebody said something which I think is quite new age, but nevertheless illustrates the point. He talks about me and my inner family, we are one. And I guess that's the goal of counseling work, to bring about an integration between all of these, disparate, arguing parts that we all experience within us. They are going in a different direction. Some of them enhance guilt, some of them throw caution to the winds. This is what we're dealing with in terms of inner conflict. We're aiming to bring about an integration that brings peace in a person's life. And again, that's something that faith people, I think, will understand very well. So, yes, certainly working with your inner child is very good. There's some excellent books that you can buy. I better hurry on because I'm not getting through all of this, but let's just identify one fact here, that very often people who come from this background have wounding that have come from the same sex and wounding that comes from the opposite sex. And so stages 3 and 4 is about developing healthy and good relationships with the opposite sex and with the same sex. And if we're talking about men, it seems to me to be, realistic to think that we're not going to be able to develop good relationships with the opposite sex if we haven't developed good relationships with the same sex. If the same sex relationships are not normalized, they're still eroticized, we are still, have fantasies about emotional attachment to other men in an unhealthy way, we have to deal with that, I would suggest, before we can go on and deal with the fact that we are not feeling attracted to the same sex, to the opposite sex. The chances are we're not experiencing opposite sex attraction because we haven't got the same sex attraction issues. Now, one thing I would have to say, again, is that this is not a formula, folks. It's not a linear thing. So there will be men who married who have normal and good loving relationships with the opposite sex and yet still struggle with this. And of course, the world's way of dealing with this is to say, well, they're bisexual. I would say that the so-called bisexuality that a person experiences is really masking emotional needs that can be addressed. They don't have to be addressed. I'm not saying that people are mentally ill if they don't address them. I'm just saying that if people want to, they should have access to be able to do that. So folks, I'm not going to be able to say more about the plan right now. I just wanted to give you the heads up to something here that I hope is of interest to you. So if you go to voicesofthesilence.com and you go to the very first video there, you can now see Voices of the Silenced. I think it's about 1 hour and 3/4. I can't remember. It's a long film that was made in 2018, but you'll hear a lot of voices of people who struggle, people who are getting help through therapy and through counseling, and because of their transformational experience spiritually. And it used to cost £10, but now it's free. And you can go there, you can see it in, I think, 13 languages. It's now being translated into. Look for the little CC or go to settings. I'm not sure if it's the top or the bottom corner. Go there, click on it, and you should be able to access whatever language, but not Norwegian. For some reason, that wasn't done. I think it's because in Norway they all speak, and in Scandinavia they all seem to speak such good English. It's amazing. So check it out, Voices of the Silence. If you can't get the subtitles on voicesofthesilence.com, then just make sure you have subscribed to the to the Core Issues Trust YouTube channel, or maybe it's Voices of the Silenced. Maybe it's the Voices of the Silenced channel. If you subscribe to that, you should be able to access. I think it's unlisted at the moment, but it will very shortly be made public. So I just wanted to bring that to your attention. And how are we doing for time? Well, I think we're doing okay. So that's my little plug. It won't cost you anything, and I hope you find some value in it. Do write and let us know, and ask whatever questions you would like to know. And yes, Thomas, if I can send you the files and you can get it translated, send it back and we'll add it. It would be great to have Norwegian. I think we're trying to do some of the other European languages as well, and I'm really grateful for that work. Okay, folks, we're coming to the end here, so I just wanted to give you the heads up. Thank you so much for participating as you have. Just have a quick look at what I'm planning. I'm not saying this won't change. You might give me the heads up that things need to go in a different direction. We've begun to look at a counseling plan today. I think we've looked at one plan. I hope it's generic enough. I think you can see the four basic stages about ending the behaviors, learning to make contact with other people, and in other words, increasing your support and your sense of connection with other people and making sure people are standing with you. Once you've done that, then it's about looking at what went wrong with people of the same sex in you and what went wrong with people of the opposite sex in you. It's not all an accident, folks. Sometimes things happen, and because of that, we maladapt to what happened, and then it can damage us. So episode 2 is about attachment hunger. That thing within us that feels very primitive and very juvenile, that childishness that we see within us that is determined to get our way. What is attachment hunger, and what role does it play, and what can we do? Why does it cause havoc when we work with other people? It's like a gremlin that suddenly comes in. I think I've got 6 minutes, so I'm going to have to really hurry up here. I thought it would be good to look at addictions, so the neuroscience. Some people, they talk about orientation as though it's something that is created and is given to us. I prefer patterning because patterning can change. What I know is we do things and these things become entrenched. They eventually become habits that can become addictions, and the neural pathways are laid down in our brains. That's part of the problem of pornography. It creates a patterning that is actually foreign to who we are and what we should be doing. Episode 4 is about emotional dependency. Now, a lot of people will say emotional dependency is something that belongs only to women who struggle with this issue. I disagree. I meet many men who struggle with emotional dependency. It's very closely related to attachment hunger. And when we begin to unravel emotional dependencies, we begin, I think, to make major progress on our journey. The thing is, when we get into emotional dependency, it becomes really, it can be a very, very painful experience. So we will be paying close attention to that one. We're almost there, folks. So after emotional dependencies, we'll get into assertiveness more fully. We've spoken a bit about that. I would like to do something about cross-cultural competence, because We're not necessarily even talking about interacting with people from other national cultures here. We're talking about kind of intercultural competence, how we work with people even within the same cultural group as ourselves. I believe it's important to look at this because it's a skill that we need to be able to navigate the best possible social connections that we have. The ancestor syndrome, well, I think that's fascinating. We are a product of many things, including those who went before us. And I have to say that there can be emotional issues embedded in families that affect us later on, even when those people have passed away. I think there's biblical precedence for this. Remember, we talk about the sins of the fathers visiting to the third and the fourth generation. Well, actually, the secularists also talk about it. So the ancestor syndrome, that work was largely done by a colleague of J.L. Moreno, the founder of psychodrama. It's really interesting. I'm fascinated in the replacement child because that's an issue that affected me. When a child really comes into the world in the mind of the parents to replace a child that was lost, perhaps through a premature death, what impact does that have on a young boy or a young girl? I think that'll be an interesting thing. The last couple of sessions, session 9 will be about big T and small t trauma, because trauma is very much a part of the process that leads to a person manifesting the symptoms of same-sex attraction or other problems around sexuality. So how do we process major therapy, major trauma? And how do we process the more minor T's, the small traumas that we experience in life? And how do we define them? And then finally, in June, hopefully, if all goes according to plan, we'll refine all of this and we will look at how each of these things can become strategies for dealing with this work. So, folk, I'm honored that there have been those of you who have kept in the room and have interacted and giving me some great information here and encouragement. Thank you very much for being here. Some people I pray with when they come for their counseling, others I don't. They don't want prayer. But I'm going to pray now, if that's okay, and ask God's blessing on our work. So join with me and then we'll close. Heavenly Father, thank you for this opportunity and for this day. We pray that there would be openness in our societies and in our countries and a willingness to grant to people the freedom and the right to explore their own issues and to get the best professional input. And Lord, where that doesn't happen, we ask you to open the doors and give us the resources and the people and the expertise and the blessing and even your presence to enable us to do your will in this way. We ask it all in Jesus' name. Amen. And folks, if you're not a prayer and if you're not into prayer, please understand this. I believe there's an awful lot of help you can get. You don't have to talk about faith issues. Many of us have found it very helpful and have benefited from doing so, but everybody's different. So thank you again, folks. It's been great to be with you and to enjoy the time together. God bless you and hope to see you next week. Goodbye.